The economy and steps expected to be taken, steps being taken to move it forward. Well, we're joined now by Mr. Opeyemi Agabaje, who is an economist and a policy analyst. Thank you for coming again today.
Thank you very much.
Well, 9 months into the fiscal year, the coordinating minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. Ogozie Kunjawala, says, as far as the 2011 budget is concerned, there is no record of implementation. But now she expects to present an early 2012 budget by November. And so, starting from that alone, are those the kind of signs that we should have some sort of, at least a budget that Nigerians can relate with, or the economy can relate with?
I think the bottom line, which to be fair to the current team, they've recognized, remains to be seen what they will do about it. But the bottom line is, do these budgets, do these policies, do these visions improve the lot of the majority of Nigerian citizens? That means not necessarily economic growth, GDP growth, but that means jobs. Yeah. That means improvements in quality of life indicators, as I call them. So human development, education, health. Does infrastructure improve so that the cost of doing business for a small and medium enterprise improves? Do graduates, does our investment climate allow for investments to come in and create new businesses so that jobs will be available for graduates? Does the education system prepare people, even if they don't find jobs, to be venturers, to set up SMEs?
Entrepreneurs.
Do they have access to credit? If they do try to do that, can, in effect, the bottom line for the Nigerian economy today, as I've always argued, is not necessarily GDP growth. Given the structure of our economy, we'll always have GDP growth. In fact, I think 7% growth is suboptimal, given that we are just taking out oil from the ground and exporting it, and we're depending on rainfall to drive our agriculture. We can do 15% growth.
Really?
If we do the right things, if we modernize agriculture, if we stimulate investment in solid minerals, if we improve infrastructure, if we fix power, so that manufacturing can take off. If we do those basic things, we can have 12-15% growth every year.
I was going to ask you a question. She was talking about the national budget, not implemented in 9 months. But you see, it appears the federal government or the minister is speaking, in quote, in isolation of what's happening in the states. Is it possible to isolate the economies of the state from that?
The state budgets are even, you see, again, we've not understood the point that the governors are sending. The state budgets are in crisis. All their projections have been thrown out of whack for several reasons. So, first of all, the minimum wage. We disagree with them. Yeah, you must pay the minimum wage and find ways to do it. 15,000 naira or 18,000 naira is not too much. But guess what? It's distorted their budget plans. Now they're fighting the sovereign wealth fund again, which we believe in. But again, because it's distorted their budget plans. So they're even in the states, I think they're in a worse position in terms of the 2011 budget than even the federal government. The federal government manages to pay its bills, manages to proceed with all its expenditure plans, still by and large
so
has 50-something%.
How can the nation's economy move forward if the federal plans in isolation of the state?
Let's not say the planning. There's an attempt through the Vision 2020 process to harmonize development at federal and state levels. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is also an attempt to impose savings on the whole federation. The National Council of States, where everybody meets, the National Economic Council, those are all mechanisms designed to harmonize budgets and planning and development strategies, economic management at the federal and the state levels. But guess what? We haven't succeeded so far in that regard. Some of us believe there are fundamental problems. I'm one of those who believes clearly that the federal government has too much to do and too much resources at its disposal. We need to put constitutional reform on the agenda. We need to put devolution of powers and a review of the revenue allocation formula and system on the agenda. The federal government needs to become, and I'm happy the president has set up this mechanism to review all the federal agencies as well. But the federal government needs to rethink what it wants to do. There are some ridiculous things we expect the federal government to do. I wondered, we were celebrating, what was it last week, the National Vehicle License thing. And so we expect a federal agency to produce vehicle licenses and driver's licenses for all Nigerians all over the country. And we expect that process to be efficient. It's never going to be efficient. First of all, the government itself is inefficient in the first place. But even that expectation is irrational. We expect the federal government to produce to man security in every local government, in every village, in every hamlet, across the length and breadth of Nigeria. There's no reasonable country that manages policing in that manner. So all of those things are intrinsically inefficient.
Yeah. Okay.
All of those. So we need to rethink the concept of allocation of powers between the federal, the states, and the local. But that's a different issue.
Yeah. But even at that, even if we go ahead and do that, because ultimately we all have to.
Yeah.
The states, which is a valid point. I mean, the budgetary process of the states, even the ones that they've got, are they showing any kind of signs to show that, well, the monies we have so far is being judiciously utilized? Look at the Niger Delta states. What is the AGR of various states in the country? How do they plan to increase it? Are they providing services?
You're completely right. And most of us who have watched this space tend to exclude one or two states in the last 4 years at least, in terms of value for money, relative value for money. But beyond that, you wonder where, if you look at the volume of resources that have been allocated to, let's leave the federal government for now, for the states and local governments since 1999. If you look at those figures, trillions of naira, billions of dollars, large figures, and you try to match it with what you see on the ground, you realize there's something is wrong. Now, it's not all because somebody just took all the money. There's also that part of it which is a basic inefficiency of the structure. So, for instance, you have Ogun State or your state, and like somebody pointed out, you had in the Old West a western region presiding over all these 8 states now, the 6, I mean, in the southwest, plus Edo and Delta, that had a small cabinet of maybe 20 people. But guess what? Today, that region has been divided into 8. Each of those states has a cabinet, in some cases of 40, plus special advisors and special assistants. Each of them has a ministry of this, ministry of that, the office of this, the office of that. So this whole problem of the way we spend money, all of the spending then goes to the current expenditure. Salaries of civil servants and political appointees. If you factor in corruption, then the government is a useless entity.